especially in a loaded ACC. They're going to look back on this one and say, thank goodness we got a win.
There's just the question marks are so many
piling up.
that it makes you think, what if we are in for a second-year hangover?
Autry is in obviously a bad situation because of all the backlash he's getting from the fans because the pressure's high, right? But I also think he has a little bit of leeway.
Breaking down everything from around the hill.
They almost surrendered that lead in the fourth quarter, which is a concern of mine. I would have preferred to see a full 60-minute performance.
And giving hot takes along the way.
I'm just not convinced. Some of the transfers are promising, but if we look at what, national champions are made of, this team has none of that stuff.
It's Sports Night, and it starts right now.
Well, it has been a week. Welcome into Sports Night alongside Ben Chadwick. I'm Alex Burstein. So much to talk about. There's been a lot of highs, a lot of lows. We want to hear what you have to think about it. It's been a good week for Syracuse lacrosse, a good week for Syracuse basketball, maybe a not great week for Syracuse football with some injury news. We'll get into all of it, and if you have any thoughts, you can call in 315-443-2011. And Ben, I think we just have to start and kind of go through this roller coaster of a week because you start on Monday with Jerry McNamara being introduced as head coach, and it seemed like this was going to be a great week for Syracuse.
Yep.
And then the same day the next day, but the same day it happens that Calvin Russell, Syracuse football's highest recruit in years, is out with a very long-term injury.
And there were some reports out there of people tweeting out how Coach Fran Brown was there to support Coach McNamara in his opening press conference on the Syracuse University campus. Coach Brown likely maybe got a call. Coach Brown sprinted out of that building and went to see what was going on. So, yeah, I mean, very, very high with, oh, man, everyone's so excited about a new basketball coach, and then the first five-star in over 2 decades. Out for most of the season, it looks like.
I mean, that has to be the worst feeling as a coach, to be surrounded by all these Orange fans. People are cheering you on, and then you have to go and realize that, oh, my plans for the season just took a huge switch.
Yep.
Luckily, there's an up for the end of this week, and that is tomorrow, number 3 Syracuse men's lacrosse and number 3 Syracuse women's lacrosse are both taking on North Carolina opponents. Number 3, the women are taking on number 18 Duke, and the men are taking on number 2 UNC. I mean, there's a lot of teams on this campus that tried to claim being the best squad, but it is very clear right now that the lacrosse programs are far and away the most dominant. In the March month, neither team lost a game.
Dude, that's crazy.
I mean, what?
That is absurd. I mean, look, schools can be described as, is this school a football or basketball school? That question can be asked for every single Power 5 school in the country, including Syracuse. If we're really, really being honest, I mean, this is a lacrosse school, man.
Yeah.
This is a lacrosse school, especially in the month of March, apparently. I mean, it's 16-0. We got Syracuse women's lacrosse on a 10-game win streak, Syracuse men's lacrosse on that 6-game win streak. They have been unbelievable over the past month.
There's been years over the last 10, 15 seasons where women's lacrosse was really good, where men's lacrosse was really good.
Yep.
This is the first year in a while that you can look down and say, both of these teams are Final Four championship contenders right now.
And I want to talk about women's lacrosse especially, too. I just mentioned they're on a 10-game win streak. That is unheard of, especially
ridiculous.
When you look at their schedule.
And it's a first-year head coach.
First-year head coach. He loses his first 3 games to the top 3 teams in the entire country right now, or at the time they were the top 3 teams in the entire country when he wrapped up that 3rd game at Stanford. And everyone's wondering, oh, man, what is this team going to be? They lost to the best 3 teams in the nation, one of which was on the road all the way across the country. And then he rattles off 10 straight wins, several ranked wins, including a win at number 4 Northwestern at the time. I know you were there. You had a whole whole heap of fun out there in Chicago. They've got some impressive wins under the belt. There's a reason they're ranked number 3 in the country. They are absolutely, in my opinion, they are absolutely a national championship contender, definitely for the Final Four at the very least.
If you think that Syracuse may be in line for its first ever national title, or maybe that you don't think that, call in 315-443-2011. I don't think anyone can argue that they're not in the conversation right now because of how darn good this defense is. Number 3 scoring defense in the nation. And it's really been anchored by a trio of players, all of which were named midseason All-Americans. Izzy Laha, second-team All-American midseason. Coco Vandiver on the third team. And then Dan Guyette, the goalkeeper, on the third team. You toss in Molly Guzik as well, who on the attack is part of the third team. But those 3 players on the back of the field, just insane levels of improvement from one year to another. And, I mean, this defense just does not seem to lose games for Syracuse.
There could be 3 or 4 more defenders that could be named as All-Americans, purely because of, look, the stats might not jump off the paper when you look at Syracuse individual stats for defenders. But the thing is, they've played such high-caliber opponents that they routinely hold under 10 goals, game in and game out. They save the offense. They've saved the offense several times this year. I mean, there's games where they win 8-6. There's games where they win 10-7, and the defense wins that game. I mean, 10 goals and 8 goals and even 6 goals sometimes should not be enough to win a lacrosse game, but they've won those lacrosse games. They've won 10 straight, the majority of which has been on the back of the defense. So, yeah, Izzy Leha, Coco Vandiver, they've done a fantastic job, including Daniela Guyette as well, who is in the bottom half of that top 10 in save percentage. But again, they've played such high caliber opponents that I'm glad that Inside Lacrosse is able to recognize, hey, Syracuse against these incredible offenses is holding up like almost no other defense in the country. We got to give them their flowers, and they did.
And they've done it against the best of the best. They've done it against some mid-tier teams. I do think they've learned that you need someone else to step up on offense. And the last couple games, it's been Caroline Trinka. She has 8 goals over her last 3. Sometimes Emma Muchnick has a big game. There's players who have stepped into an offensive role for one game after another. But tomorrow, you really need someone to step up against this Duke Blue Devils team that scores almost 15 goals a game, is a top 15 offense in the nation, especially after playing a Cornell team on Tuesday in rainy conditions where there ended up being an okay number of goals, over 30 combined shots on goal. But this is going to be an offensive battle tomorrow at Duke. How do you counteract that is the key for Syracuse.
Oh, it is. And this is, look, they're a top 15 offense in the country. You just mentioned that. Syracuse has only played 2 other top 15 offenses in the country. Those offenses were North Carolina and Northwestern. They sit at number 1 and number 3 in terms of all the offenses in the entire country. North Carolina scored 13 goals on Syracuse. Northwestern scored 6.
And I mean, that North Carolina number 13 seems like a lot, but that's the number 2 team in the nation.
That's the number 1 offense in the nation,
exactly.
too. 13
so
is not a
lot.
It
that
is not
crazy.
a lot whatsoever.
I think Syracuse has proven it can compete with the best of the best. I just think it's important that Syracuse heads into this game. I mean, in women's lacrosse, number 18 doesn't seem like a horrible test because there's only so many teams that compete year in, year out. Sure, there's a little more parity, but I mean, women's lacrosse is not a sport where there's 20 teams competing for the national title.
Same in men's lacrosse as well. It's just the sport of lacrosse. There's the big dogs and there's everyone else.
That being said, I mean, Duke has the same ACC record as Syracuse right now. This is not a game that you can walk into on the road completely confident in your defense and say, we're going to win this game. Syracuse needs to have some command tomorrow, and I think it starts on the draw. This team has been, I don't want to say abysmal because there's some games that they get possession, they have some good times out of Molly Guzik where they have nice stretches, but as a whole, Syracuse has not been great on the draw this year. Duke has been. You cannot let the Blue Devils run you over with possession.
And Duke is top 10 in the country for draw control percentage as well, and Syracuse is outside of the top 50. So this is going to be the biggest test. Look, you can rely on the defense. You know that the defense, they're facing a top 15 offense, but you know what the defense is capable of. You know that they're capable of holding a team like Northwestern to under 7 goals, under 6 goals in a game. You know that they're capable of holding the best offense in the country to 13 goals, which again is incredibly impressive against the best offense in the country. What you don't know is, can your draw control unit just put up a respectable enough performance in order to get the ball into your offense's hands and actually be able to get goals on the board? That is the reason why Syracuse's offense has struggled. I mean, that is a big reason why. They don't get the ball enough. The defense has been excellent. They've won 10 straight games. They're the third best team in the country, according to Inside Lacrosse. But the offense doesn't get the ball in their stick enough to really capitalize and blow teams out or win some of those earlier games that Syracuse lost.
I think it's an interesting conundrum where, let's say you break the game into 4 different compartments tomorrow. You have goalkeeping. I think you give Syracuse the edge. Dan Guyette has been excellent the last 4+ weeks. You go on the defense, Syracuse has the edge. So the entire...
By far, by the way, too.
Yes.
Duke's defense has struggled this year.
Exactly.
Syracuse's defense has by far the advantage.
You take that first half, Syracuse might win this game by double digits. But then you go into the draw, and it's a big lead for Duke. And you go into the offense. This is a Blue Devils team that has 3 players with over 30 goals.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you look at that. This could be a very tight game. It's good offense versus good defense, and it should be a fun one in Duke. That is a 4 p.m. opening draw, and we'll have coverage tweeting that at WAER Sports on X. But that's not the only big game tomorrow. Number 3 Syracuse men's lacrosse taking on number 2 North Carolina. The biggest matchup of the week in the sport,
1,000%.
Number 2, number 3. And to break it down, we bring on one of our play-by-play broadcasters for tomorrow's contest, Nick Evans. Nick, how's it going down in Carolina?
It is absolutely gorgeous, guys. I know you have good weather back there in Syracuse. I think, I don't know what's going on, but of course, the moment I leave, it gets nice up there. But, it's absolutely stunning down here. And, Dan Papillo and I certainly happy to bring everybody the action tomorrow on WAER.
I think it's funny. Usually when we have people call in, they're bragging about the good weather. This is the first time that Syracuse has been
envious of Syracuse. But I mean, Nick, I was debating wearing my Hawaiian shirt onto the show today for our YouTube watchers. I did not. I'm at a regular poll. I should have, man. Next time when there's good weather outside, which there probably won't be ever again, it seems like in Syracuse, I will do that just for you, Nick. I promise.
Yeah, not sure if you'll ever top the bolo ties that you and Jay Klein wore to call the Air Force game, but I mean, you can keep taking shots, man, at the fashion statements. There's no question. You gotta do it.
I'm the guy to do it. You ask anyone that knows me, I'm the guy to make those fashion statements. That's who I am.
Okay, before we get into a fashion debate, I think we have to break down this matchup. It's number 1 in RPI against number 2 in RPI. UNC with the slight edge, but it really feels that this could be the game that determines who's the number 1 seed come the tournament. And if you have thoughts on who's going to win this game, who is the difference maker, you can call in 315-443-2011. But Nick, we'll go to you. Does this feel like the most important game yet for Syracuse? Does Maryland have that edge? Where would you kind of put this in the importance rankings?
Yeah, well, I think at the time that Maryland game felt bigger. Now, of course, retrospectively, the Terps haven't quite had the season that they were expected to have. So, I think that game maybe loses some of its luster, hindsight being 20/20. But, I mean, yeah, you said it, Alex. I think the bottom line with this game is, there aren't many teams in the country that measure up to Syracuse on paper. North Carolina is unequivocally one of them. I mean, this UNC squad, people know, of course, about Brady Wambach, very possibly the best Fogo in the country. Obviously, Owen Duffy, a former number 1 overall prospect the year after Spallina. Dom Petramala, one of the best goal scorers in the country. But, I mean, this entire roster, you guys, I mean, the deeper you dig into it, it's like walking down the strip in Las Vegas, right? You look around, that's a 5-star. That's a 5-star.
Yep.
That's a 5-star. I mean, it is a really, really impressive group of players. I think on the top end, you still give the edge to Syracuse because of, how many great seniors they have. But, I mean, this UNC squad, their second-line midfield is 3 5-star freshmen.
It's unbelievable.
That's pretty good.
We'll see Gary Merrill and Luke Bear and Anthony Rayo probably have an impact tomorrow. But, I mean, it goes deep with this UNC squad. There is talent everywhere, all positions, all ages. So, when you mix that with the fact that Syracuse coming on the road for this game, it's not going to be easy tomorrow. There's no question.
I don't think you can give the edge, even on paper, to Syracuse after last week. I mean, the Orange had a good win.
Well, that's
against
the thing about it on paper, though.
17-7 UNC over Harvard. That's a Harvard team that Syracuse lost to. Sure, the weather was different, but both of these games were at Harvard, and one is competitive. One looked like a JV against a varsity team.
Yeah, and that's a Harvard team, Alex, that went into that game 8-0.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
They were red
So,
hot on that one.
they had been playing great lacrosse the entire season, and you're right. UNC absolutely dismantled them. Owen Duffy, I think he's still scoring goals. He finished with 7 in that game. He's going to be a handful for Syracuse tomorrow. One of the best all-around attackers in the country. And then, of course, I already mentioned Dom Petramala, just one of the, son of Dave, who's the defensive coordinator for UNC, and of course one of the great coaches in the history, head coaches in the history of college lacrosse at Johns Hopkins, 2-time national champion. Dom Petramala, one of the best finishers, goal scorers in the nation. So it's an offense that can get red hot. It's a top 5 offense nationally to go along with a top 10 defense. And they're coming off a really impressive performance against Harvard. Plenty of momentum on that UNC side as well.
And you mentioned Petramala. I mean, he had 6 goals against Syracuse last year in that UNC 14-12 win in the regular season finale. So he knows how to score against the Orange. We know that's for sure. You mentioned before how talented both these teams are. We keep talking about how good they are on paper. I wouldn't expect you to say this, but I will say this. I think that the 2 best lacrosse players in the country are playing in this game. I think Joey Spallina is one of the 2, and I think Brady Wambach is one of the 2. Brady Wambach has been unbelievable this season. Over 70% face-off win rate is unheard of nowadays, man. I mean, they've played good opponents as well. You would know more than anyone who UNC has played to get to this point right now as a number 2 team in the country, and Brady Wambach continues to annihilate. I mean, he made Harvard look, like Alex said before, a freshman team out there. It was unreal what he was able to do to the Crimson Tide, and I think John Mullen might be shaking in his boots right now.
Yeah, but I do say that last year he only won the face-off battle against Syracuse 16-11. Like, if we do see Mullen return to his classic self, which this is the game to do it in,
he has to do it if they want to win.
It can
this
be
game.
competitive. I don't think it's a foregone story already.
But Nick, to go over to you, Brady. Like, when I just say the name Brady Wambach, what comes to your mind?
Game changer.
Yeah.
Total game changer. And he plays such a big role in the way that team tries to beat you every week, right? Like, it's a good defense for UNC, but their formula is we're just going to possess the ball way more than you, and our offense is so loaded, and our midfield. I mean, they have like 6 5-star midfielders that play, guys.
You keep laughing every time you bring up UNC's talent and their roster.
Attacking unit for them. Yeah, and it all revolves around Wambach, and I mean, like you said, guys, John Mullen had such a great year last year for Syracuse. His face-off win rate down 7% this season. Obviously, it hasn't been quite the same for him in his junior year. But Alex, I think you put it well. If there were to be a moment for him to kind of snap out of it and get back to his old self, it's got to happen tomorrow. Because if Wambach gets on top of him, and all of a sudden UNC, running away with the face-off battle by 7, 8, 9. I think this game becomes really hard to win if you're Syracuse.
I just don't see a scenario where that strategy of holding possession and shooting at free will works against the Syracuse team. Like, plenty of teams have been competitive, have won the battle against Syracuse at faceoff this year, but this Syracuse defense, I mean, the short sticks are ridiculously aggressive. You have Chuck Kaczynski back this game, which I think is a completely underrated moment for Syracuse. He had that that rough hit that made him miss a game last week, but the aggression that he brings, that Jake Spallina brings, that Dante Bowen brings, that all of this defense brings, I think is enough not to neutralize the threat that North Carolina has with so much possession, but I don't think Syracuse struggling at the faceoff is the be-all, end-all for Syracuse tomorrow.
Well, you're right in saying that, they've been able to still win games this season, even if Mullen doesn't have his best stuff at the faceoff X, obviously, right? They've won 6 games in a row. But this Tar Heels offense is, I think you could certainly argue, it's going to be the best they've seen so far this season, right? I mean, I'm trying to think. Harvard, has a really good offense. Maryland doesn't quite measure up. I don't think you'd say any of the Ivy League teams they played quite measure up. Guys, Owen Duffy, Dom Petramala, and Brevin Wilson, who's kind of the third leg on the attack for UNC. That's a fierce group. I mean, those guys are a handful. Duffy is just flat out one of the best all-around attackmen in the country. There's zero doubt about it. Like I talked about, Petramala, already 28 goals this season for him. He's just a pure finisher, a shooter in every fashion of the term. And, like you mentioned, Ben, 6 goals for him against Syracuse last season. And then, Brevin Wilson's no slouch either. So against any other opponent, Alex, I would agree with you. I would say that Syracuse can, they obviously play good defense, great midfielders. They would be able to survive losing the possession battle. But I think, the reason this UNC team is so good is because that's their formula, right? I mean, that's the way they play every week. Everyone talks about trying to play make it, take it lacrosse. They do it every single week. That is the way that they play. They want to score, get it back, score, get it back, score, get it back. And, it's going to be tough to handle for the Orange. I don't think there's any doubt.
Nick Evans with us, Ben Chowick and Alex Burstein on SportsNite, previewing number 3 versus number 2, Syracuse and North Carolina tomorrow. Maybe this is me being too much of a Syracuse optimist, but this offense for Syracuse, I don't think has played at this level once as this collective group with Joey Spallina and all the seniors during this 4 years. I don't think you've had...
But the thing is, North Carolina plays at this level nearly every game. They have been unbelievable.
That's great, but Syracuse finally has its offense kind of figured out.
North Carolina, so what is the difference of Syracuse figuring it out in the last 3 games and North Carolina having it figured out by week 1?
I just think it doesn't matter. As long as they both have it figured out tomorrow, I think Syracuse is in a great position to compete with the North Carolina offense on the other end.
I don't think Syracuse will have trouble scoring when they have the ball. I just think it's all going to come down to how often they have the ball, right? I mean, I was listening to Q Sports Talk the other day, guys. They had Rick Beardsley on, and he said a similar thing. This game is all about the faceoff X. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, right? Because when you have someone like Wambach, you don't have to beat him, but you can't let him win 18 of 26 draws.
I don't see that happening.
He's done it to so many other teams this year, man.
I know,
John Mullen has had his times where he's been
he's
great.
5th in the nation in faceoff wins. We're writing him
but
off.
But he's outside of the top 25 in faceoff percentage. That's what matters. Don't nitpick stats saying, he's had a lot of faceoffs.
Cumulative Alex Burstein.
He's had a lot of faceoffs and he's won a lot of faceoffs. I don't care about that, man. How many has he won of the ones he's taken? What is the percentage? He's outside the top 25 in D1 college lacrosse. It's not that impressive. He's nearing an average faceoff percentage in Division I college lacrosse. Brady Wambach is the best in the country, over 70%. And if Nick is right, if this does come down to the faceoff X, and if Nick and Rick Beardsley are correct, if this comes down to the faceoff X, North Carolina has that advantage. Now, do I think Brady Wambach is going to win 75, 80% of faceoffs like he kind of did against Harvard last week? No. I think John Mullen's talented. I think he'll put up a fight. Do I think he could win 60 to 65%? Absolutely. And that's the difference.
I think if you keep it at 60, Syracuse is in this game.
It's two of the 3 best teams in the country, if not the 2 best teams in the country. This will be a great game. Nick, you are a very lucky man for being down there, and you get to watch this firsthand, right? And we know this is going to be a great game, but that's why we're here to nitpick. what about it will be the deciding factor.
I'm
and if
just
the
saying-
face-off X is it, then North Carolina's winning this game.
Nick, tell me if I'm wrong, but
You're wrong.
If if Wambach only wins 60% and Syracuse is getting 4 out of every 10 faceoffs, I don't think there's a negligible difference in who has the lead or who has the advantage.
Well, one other aspect of this game that will be important for Syracuse, because I would be surprised if, UNC doesn't win the face-off battle with Wambach. Syracuse is going to have to force turnovers, okay? Now, you mentioned, Alex, Chuck Kaczynski back for this game after, getting ejected against Georgetown and then, I guess you would say, suspended for a game against Duke because of that. But this one, to me, you would think that they put Figueres on Duffy. You would think
absolutely.
they have Dwan on Petramala. To me, this is totally going to be about, whether it's Chuck Kaczynski in there mostly, or, maybe Jordan Beck gets mixed in a little bit for Syracuse in that third pole spot. Brevin Wilson, he's the third biggest name out of the 3 spots on Carolina's attacking line. That kid is quick. He can shoot from any angle. He is a legit dodger. I mean, if he were on the overwhelming majority of any of the other teams in the country, he would be the top offensive guy for any of them.
Yeah.
Like, he can really, really play. So, it's going to be it's really going to be a test tomorrow. We've talked so much about how well Syracuse's defense has played this season and how good the polls are. Figueres and Dwan, of course, Tuorton, watch listers, Jordan Beck, Chuck Kaczynski get mixed in. They've all played well. They're really going to be tested tomorrow, and you have to force turnovers. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, right? Because if you go into it thinking, hey, the possession battle with the face-offs may be an issue in this game, you got to get those back in some way, right? And the way that you do that is by forcing turnovers on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, the North Carolina attack, to compare it to something else for maybe our listeners to understand a little bit more, it's like Ohio State receiving corps, right? They just have so much depth and so much talent. That's just flat out what it is. You take the number 3 guy on that North Carolina attack, like you said, put him almost anywhere else. He is the top guy. Nick, I have one more thing for you. This North Carolina offense, we've talked about them for, 5-10 minutes now? Rightfully so, too. They seem to be really on one or really tapered off in some games. I mean, there hasn't been a single game this season where they've scored between 13 and 16 goals. I'm not much of a hypothetical guy. I don't want to get into that whole world right now. But there are games like where they only can score 11 against Jacksonville and 11 against Penn. And there's games where they could score 19 against Brown and 17 against Harvard, and they could and 17 against Johns Hopkins as well. So is that a factor? Like, is North Carolina playing good defenses when they score these just 10 or 11 goals, or is it just them having their on days and having their off days pretty roller coastery throughout this season so far?
Yeah, I feel like 13 to 16 is somewhat of a small range there. I mean, I think there's something to what you're saying, right? Like, they kind of either it seems like they maybe generally hang between 10 and 12 against the really good teams, and then they can drop 20 against High Point or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think they're going to come to play. Like, I don't think it's like an inconsistent offense. Like, I just struggle to give them that tag because there are so many good players. Again, on average, they're right around 15 goals per game, which, again, is top 5 in the country offensively. Yeah. And I just really think, in front of their home crowd, the way they looked against Harvard, I mean, you can't – it's hard to overstate how well they looked, how good they looked in that Harvard game.
So good.
They are so versatile offensively. They share the ball. They can spread you out. Sometimes they'll kind of play – with like a 4-person midfield line, they'll line up, 4 guys 30 yards from cage and then start an attack from there. Sometimes they'll kind of, suffocate you slowly and squeeze you in around crease. It's such a versatile offense for this Carolina group. And, like I said, it's going to be largely about the polls for Syracuse tomorrow. Dwan, Figueres, and Chuck Kaczynski, maybe a little bit of Jordan Beck. How do those guys hold up? I think that's going to be the question, along with obviously the matchup that we've discussed plenty at the Face-Off X.
I agree.
It's number 2 and number 3, North Carolina and Syracuse tomorrow. That is a 2 p.m. opening face-off, 1:30. Our coverage on WAER begins with McClure Modeling Countdown to face-off. Nick Evans and Dan Papillo will be on the call. Nick, make sure to get some sleep before that big matchup. Thanks for joining us.
I will. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Well, some great analysis from Nick, and that is a great game. Make sure to catch it on our airwaves tomorrow. But there's still so many other sports we have to talk about here on Sports Night. And when we return, we're going to chat with Javon Edmonds, the Syracuse football beat reporter for Syracuse.com, after what was an up and down week for Syracuse football.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Sports Night on WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
Syracuse men's lacrosse had arguably maybe Gary Gates' best weekend ever as head coach.
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
The voice of Syracuse men's lacrosse and Syracuse women's basketball as well. Tim Leonard, Javon Edmonds of Syracuse.com.
Check out weekly episodes and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We hope you're enjoying this WAER sports broadcast. Our sports staff goes where the teams go, home and away, and prepare for days before each game broadcast. Our talk show and podcast hosts analyze games, pore over stats, and keep up on sports trends. These and many behind-the-scenes opportunities are made possible by listener donations. So if you're a fan or an alum, donate to keep our sports legacy strong at WAER.org and click donate.
All right, welcome back on Sports Night here on April 3rd. Show still going till 9 p.m. Check us out on X and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. Ben Chadwick alongside Alex Burstein, and we are pleased to welcome on Javon Edmonds, the football reporter for Syracuse.com. Javon, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be with you guys. Anytime I can get on radio, I'm an excited man, so I appreciate you having me.
Well, we're excited to have you as well, but not to go from excitement to kind of a lull of a story and a low energy story, I guess you could say. But some unfortunate news just happened for Syracuse football, obviously. Calvin Russell, the first 5-star the team has gotten in over 2 decades. It was announced that he tore his Achilles in practice the other day. Just overall, from what you've seen from the team and his teammates and the coaches, just the overall feeling about that injury, when it happened, and how the team is handling it.
I mean, no one's happy about it, right? I mean, this is a 5-star guy, 6'5", $195, legit 6'5" at that. You know, you'll see that height ranking, and dude's really 6'3". All the talent in the world, great kid, you know, and the whole team loves him. So to see him go down was absolutely, you know, just morale killer. But, you know, they're going to rally around him. You know, friends spoken with him. His agent flew up to see him. Mom came up to see him. So Calvin's got the necessary support to get through this, you know, that Achilles tear. That's a 6 to 12-month injury. But he's a strong kid. You know, he's a guy who prioritized the weight room pretty early on in his career. So, you know, they're looking at late October, early November for a return. And, you know, that's possible for a guy who, you know, take the weight room seriously. You're going to recover from Achilles tear faster than, you know, a Steve Angeli probably would, right? That'd probably be my bet. Whenever Steve Angeli comes back, let's say it's a 9-month timeline, I bet Calvin Russell beats him by 2, 3, 4 weeks. So they're optimistic, but, you know, like you said, you hate to see an injury like that, especially to, you know, a true freshman who came in and was so talented, you know, off the rip.
How did Russell look in the first couple practices that were open to the media before this injury?
You want to talk about a jump ball threat? I mean, yeah, listen, you throw it up to him and he's going to go get it. That's the best way I can put it. But I don't even want to restrict him to that box. You know, with Josh Gaddis as your receivers coach, you're going to learn how to run routes, right? And I'd sit there and, you know, watch Josh take those guys through the drills. And Calvin's technique really stood out. Like, there were some experienced guys on that team who Calvin is ahead of in that aspect in terms of footwork, keeping your hips down, pad length on your route running, at the top of your break. Calvin is the full package. Like, that's one of those guys where, he earned his 5-star rating. So, I mean, that guy was, I would bet a lot of money that he was going to play as a true freshman. He posted on his Instagram story his goals for the season. He wanted 1,100 yards. He wanted anywhere from 10 to 12 touchdowns. He wanted to be ACC Freshman of the Year, wanted to be a freshman All-American. And, Fran Brown was confident that Calvin would be able to go do that. So, I mean, the guy was, he was legit. He lived up to the hype. So, again, just from a football standpoint, they lost the real talent on Monday.
Just not to dwell on the injury too much, but it was released that his doctor that performed the surgery on him, the same doctor that performed the Achilles surgeries on Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum, obviously has worked out for those guys in the NBA after even their injuries. So for him, do you have any news you could tell us or something about the process that was underwent when Calvin Russell went to that doctor and could possibly be on a similar track that those guys were on?
Yeah, he got hurt Monday. He was in the hospital wrapped up with the, Achilles injury scooter on Tuesday. Wednesday morning, he had the surgery by Dr. O'Malley. Came back to Syracuse yesterday, I want to say, and he is going to get going on rehab pretty quickly. One thing I will give Syracuse and its medical staff, they don't waste time with these injuries. As soon as you got something going, you get whatever procedure you need, and then rehab starts immediately. They didn't waste any time with Steve Angeli, and they didn't waste any time with Calvin. So, like you said, you go get the guy who did Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant's injury, you mean serious business. So I just wish that guy was around for when my boy Kobe tore his Achilles back.
I know we've only heard from Coach Fran once or twice since this injury, but has there been any signs to kind of who's next up, considering Russell was supposed to be maybe not wide receiver one, but in one of those top outside roles?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so Tyshawn Russell, remember, before he got hurt last year, and he showed that he could play some football. That was a very under-the-radar addition in the portal last season. His spring camp, he got off to a little bit of a slow start last year. Miles White was on him every day in practice, even dropping passes and everything. Like, Tyshawn Russell's first month in Syracuse was rough. And then the season comes, and the guy can play some football. So he's going to be a factor on one side. And then Syracuse got real big in the portal. Cole Weaver, 6'3", 220. He's working out at receiver and at tight end. Elijah Moore, 6'3", 6'4". Zamondre Merriweather, 6'3", 200 plus. So they've got size, and all three of those guys have talent on the outside. So the jump ball threat will still be there. I'm not going to say any of them can jump as high as Calvin Russell. But the 50-50 playmaking is there with all three. Booby Johnson is a guy who you're going to be able to play outside and in the slot. So they've got guys who are going to be able to make plays for Steve Angeli or Amari Odom or Malachi Nelson, whoever is out there for New Hampshire. So the thing with Calvin's injury was, you hate to see it happen, but if there was a position group that could afford an injury like that, it was wide receiver. That is their deepest position on the team by far.
Would you say that it seems like they're kind of replacing Russell by committee? It might not be one guy, but you might throw someone in for a couple plays and then just try it out with a few different guys?
Yeah, I think the spring game is going to tell us a lot about who really has the edge over there. And again, I think fall ball is going to give us a lot of our answers when we figure out exactly how they plan to use Cole Weaver, and who's really standing out between Moore and Merriweather. But, regardless, I think you're going to see 6 receivers play for Syracuse as part of a consistent rotation this year. Darian Williams is a guy who got stronger in Fran Love's. Darian played, 8 games last year and impressed. So you're going to see at least 6 receivers for Syracuse regardless. And it might be one of those things where whoever goes off is really just dependent and contingent upon their opponent that week.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Syracuse football spring game. That'll actually be on our airwaves next Saturday starting at 7:30 p.m. And once again, you're listening to Sports Night. We're joined by Javon Edmonds, the football reporter from Syracuse.com. Really appreciate his time. Ben Chadwick alongside Alex Burstein. Now, Javon, in that spring game, are there certain players that you're really looking out for, maybe that have question marks around them, or you're just not sure if they're going to take a big jump? Are there guys that you really want to see be impressive in that game coming up next Saturday?
Yeah, so I want to see where Raheem Long is right now. Cornell Perry has been great in camp. I mean, he was a very good high safety last year. And then this year, he's kind of had that hybrid role in camp where he's coming down one-on-one with the tight ends. And he is not being bullied at all. He is giving them fits. So I want to see how Raheem Long looks next to him. Because Raheem's had some time at safety, and he's had some time in the nickel this spring. So I'm intrigued to see where they're using him. Nazir Ward and Amari Snowden, two transfers in that secondary that they're pretty high on. So my eyes will be on them. But the front seven, right, I think that's the question for this team. Is Chris D'Apollonia going to be enough as a coverage linebacker for Syracuse? What's that duo of Rashard Perry and Dylan Fontes going to look like inside? Can they finally get some interior pressure? But most importantly, can Tunisi Adelaide and Keyshawn Johnson get to the quarterback? I mean, you brought in eighth year David Reese last year. Didn't work out. Kevin Jova, you had to go back and forth between defensive tackle and defensive end. David Perriolo was really a run-stopping body. You didn't have any pass rush last year. So Tunisi Adelaide with, 6.5 sacks at UNLV. How is that going to translate to the ACC? Keyshawn Johnson, more production, 13.5 sacks, which is at Tennessee Martin. How is that going to translate to the ACC? So I think that front seven is where all the questions lie. And we'll see what Vince Carey's scheme can do to improve those players' performances from last season.
Yeah, Vince Carey has obviously been a very successful D coordinator over at Toledo, already bringing some of his guys over. And yeah, you mentioned, the pass rush last year was unfortunate for Syracuse. It was one of the weak parts of a fairly weak season as well for the Orange, of course, injury-riddled. One of those injuries, of course, was Steve Angeli. You mentioned the pass game earlier. What are you expecting to see from a guy like Amari Odom, or do you even expect to see Amari Odom out there week one? Will it be Malachi Nelson? Is Steve Angeli already at a point where he could possibly play really early on? What can you tell about the quarterback situation for Syracuse?
Number one, it's a real competition. You got the CUSA quarterback of the year against the former number one recruit in the country. So it's a real competition. They both have all the arm talent in the world. Malachi Nelson is intent to prove that UTEP was just something you could not blame him for. I mean, the guy lost all the receivers he worked out with as the starters during the offseason. Got hurt last year. So he was throwing to, no disrespect to those guys, but, I remember Shannon Sharp comparing LeBron's first stint in Cleveland. He said LeBron was playing with two squeegees in a mop bucket. And that's kind of the similar situation that Malachi Nelson had to deal with at UTEP last year. So I think those two are in a real competition. And Steve Angeli actually, look, he's still walking a little gingerly, right? Sure. But he's out there throwing the football. He's got some zip and some pop to it. So there is a strong possibility that he is back in time for the beginning of the season. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee just yet. Odom and Nelson, they look like they will be able to steer the ship until Angeli gets back, though. With the talent that they have, with the production that Odom has, with the receivers that they're going to be throwing to, with the tight ends room that is better than it was last season, with running backs that are more dynamic than what you had last season, with Jeff Nixon as your OC, they're going to be able to weather the storm without Steve Angeli this season. It just, again, it will come down to how much help do they get from that defense.
So to be clear, you would say this is a competition basically for that backup spot until Angeli is fully healthy. Do you think Angeli still has the full trust of this coaching staff?
Absolutely. That is Fran Brown's guy. And I think we learned that when Steve stayed in Syracuse this offseason instead of following Nunzio Campanelli to UConn. For that reason alone, combined with the fact that Steve was leading the country in passing yards before he got hurt last season, I think this is still Steve Angeli's team. Now, if he shows that he has regressed and that Achilles injury has made him less than what he was, will they pull the plug and pivot to Odom or Nelson? I think absolutely they will. But I think right now it's Odom and Nelson are out there to see who can run the team until Steve gets back. And if Steve comes back and he just looks like, that injury had a real effect on you, I don't think they'll be hesitant to pivot this year. I mean, they learned from last season. That's why they went out and got all these quarterbacks. They didn't have enough depth in that room, and they stuck with Ricky Collins and Joe Filardi for way too long. They're not going to make that mistake 2 years in a row.
Now, with the passing game last year, obviously, with Kyle McCord even 2 years ago, I mean, Syracuse was throwing the ball, 45, 50 times a game? And even with Steve, when Steve was healthy out there, they made a point, hey, we believe in our quarterback. We're going to throw this football. So I guess my question here, like next year with Amari Odom or Malachi Nelson, do you expect to see that same pass-heavy offense from Jeff Nixon or even the passing game coordinator Sean Ryan? Or do you think it'll be really dialed back and the run game will be involved a lot more with those two guys, and even when Steve comes back in week 4 or 5 later on in the season?
Listen, Amari Odom and Malachi Nelson are two guys from Southern California. What does that mean? they want to let it rip. So, no, it is still going to be drop back and air it out and trust your quarterback and your receivers to carry this team. That's not changing whatsoever. There's two Southern California guys who, again, one's coming off a Conference USA championship, first team all conference, really throws the football. Everyone you speak to about Amari Odom, the first thing they say, that guy's IQ is off the charts. It's the first thing that has popped to literally every coach that he has played the quarterback position for. And then Malachi Nelson, arm talent, it's natural. For him, it's just going to be decision-making and timing, So will they try to get the run game going and start up the play action? Absolutely. That's the quarterback's best friend. But make no mistake about it, they will still air the ball out. You don't have Sean Ryan as your quarterback's coach and Josh Gaddis as your receivers coach, just to go into a stale, hand it off 30 times a game offense. It's just not happening like that.
It should be a very interesting season. A lot of questions to be answered. Javon, we really, really appreciate the time. Once again, Javon Edmonds, football reporter for Syracuse.com. Javon, thank you, man.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, fellas.
All right, next up on Sports Night, we've got Jerry McNamara addressing the Syracuse campus for the very first time and what we had to make of it. That's all coming up right here on Sports Night on WAER.
Thanks for listening. We hope you're enjoying this WAER sports broadcast. Our sports staff goes where the teams go, home and away, and prepare for days before each game broadcast. Our talk show and podcast hosts analyze games, pore over stats, and keep up on sports trends. These and many behind-the-scenes opportunities are made possible by listener donations. So if you're a fan or an alum, donate to keep our sports legacy strong at WAER.org and click donate.
You love your job running a newspaper, reporting the first draft of truth, but then war. Everyone you know is trying to flee, and the new guys in charge, they don't like reporters. And they have guns. On the next Snap Judgment, last paper standing. Do not miss it.
Sunday morning at 10 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Wrapping up shop here on Sports Night on WAER alongside Ben Chadwick. I'm Alex Burstein. We've talked about the lacrosse teams. We've talked about Syracuse football. But we're missing two teams that have had big weeks. Syracuse men's and women's basketball, between the transfer portal, some player announcements, and most importantly, a new head coach announcement.
Yes.
It's been a busy week for Syracuse.
It absolutely has, right? There were some talks and rumblings about this new head coach, and maybe it was reported before. But yes, the university has officially announced, like we said, Jerry McNamara will be the new head coach, and he talked with the Syracuse campus, like I mentioned before as well.
If you have thoughts on GMAC, we want to hear it. Jerry McNamara, the new head coach for Syracuse men's basketball, 315-443-2011. We've got a couple of thoughts on this, but first, let's just hear his very, very confident but also down-to-earth appeal that he had during his opening press conference.
You know why I'm here. Anybody that knows me knows why I'm here. I'm here to win. It's who I am, and it's who I will always be. Let's get this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I think, what Syracuse needed. He's a guy who has won before. He's a guy who knows this fan base so well. I'm sure you can say Adrian Autry did too. He was homegrown with Syracuse, and like, all due respect, the fans at the start did like him. And this, I mean, sure, it could be a repeat of that. But the appeal, the amount of money he's raised, his down-to-earth, I mean, he almost cried during this press conference. You like to see it.
I think the big difference when it comes to comparing Jerry McNamara and Adrian Autry in the early stages when they were just hired is Coach Adrian Autry, people were not on the streets picketing saying, we need Adrian Autry as our next head coach. Now, were they doing that for Jerry McNamara? No, but I'm saying hypothetically because everyone was doing that on Twitter, the virtual picketing, if you will. So Adrian Autry was kind of thrust into the role, and people were saying, you know what? Yeah, this guy's a Jim Boeheim descendant. He's been under Jim Boeheim for a long time now. Yeah, he'll be our next Jim Boeheim. This is yeah, sure, why not? And then obviously things did not work out. 3 seasons, 3 very unfortunate seasons, 3 seasons without March Madness. The difference here is Jerry McNamara, fans were pleading for Jerry McNamara, and then they got him. So now he has the entire university and fan base behind him, and that's a big difference from when Coach Adrian Autry was hired.
I do think one of the most interesting things he said during his post-press conference after the introduction was he really feels like there's a lot of talent on this team, and he feels like there's guys you need to keep. I like that. I think there is a lot of pure talent. That brings us to another point today where kind of the first, I don't know if you can say big name, but the first guy who played this year announcing he's going to enter the transfer portal in Tyler Betsy. Averaged just under 7 points per game, under 3 rebounds per game. Did have 15 and 7 in that season-ending loss to SMU. It's a loss that a lot of fans are going to say it's not going to make a big difference, but he was a high-effort guy, and I think there was a lot of games where he looked like he cared a lot more than the other people on the courts.
That's a loss that I think hurts more than some fans and people may realize. Tyler Betsy was, sure, he played less than 20 minutes a game. You just mentioned he scored less than 7 points a game. That's not to take away from what he was, sure, but also what he could have been. This is a young guy. He's a sophomore. He could have grown and flourished with Syracuse. Probably would have stayed 2 years. He's probably going to play college basketball, I should say, for 2 years until his senior year. This is a guy who could shoot lights out from 3. He was the team's leading three-point shooter in terms of percentage. He was the only player above 40% on Syracuse's roster. He absolutely could have grown into a starter, possibly this next year, but you got to wonder.
Well, I don't know if he'd start.
That's the thing. You got to wonder, did he have that conversation with Jerry McNamara where McNamara said, hey, man, the plan I have right now is, no, you'll be like a 6th or 7th man. And he might have heard that and said, you know, I'm worth more. Let me enter my name in the portal and see what happens, which is fair. I completely get that from Betsy's point of view, but I think that he could have been a really, really valuable asset off the bench this next year, likely. I agree with you. But in that senior year, he could have really been a starter for Syracuse.
Planning to enter the transfer portal when it opens on April 7th after the national championship game this upcoming Monday. Another team that's being hit pretty hard by the transfer portal is Syracuse women's basketball. And we're not talking about a 3rd or 4th guy off the bench.
Yeah.
Sophie Burrows, who's been a leader for this team 2 seasons now, announcing she's going to the transfer portal. She's followed by Maddie Potts, her fellow Australian. Those two always had a good connection. Maybe not as huge of an impact as we saw with Burrows, but then also Shai Hawkins is entering the portal and Justice Fitzgerald. None of those last three are like huge names, but 4 players after a team that made it to the second round of March Madness already in the portal, it's kind of surprising to me.
It is surprising, but if you're a Syracuse fan, I think there is a way you could stay optimistic about this because, again, I mean, we could speculate all we want because it's so much fun, but we could speculate all we want about Coach FLJ saying, I might plan on bringing in some really, really high caliber players. I don't know where you guys are going to slot in. Now, Sophie Burrows has been a starter for a few years now. She would have been in the starting lineup next year, you have to imagine, but she did taper off. I mean, let's be real. That field goal percentage went down a good bit. That 3-point percentage went down a good bit. Both were under 40%. 3-point percentage was just barely over 30% this last year. She had a worse season this year than she did in her sophomore season. So losing Sophie Burrows after a season like this, it hurts a little less than it would have if she transferred after that sophomore campaign.
It's going to take some more magic in the portal, but like you said, that's been a strength that Syracuse, you could argue Syracuse women's basketball has done better with the transfer portal than any other sport at Syracuse. Sure, you hit with Kyle McCord for the football team, but if you look at this year's Syracuse women's basketball team, if you take out Layla Felia and Dominique Darius, 2 transfer pickups, they're what, a 10-win team?
They don't make March Madness.
They definitely do not make March Madness.
Yeah, grabbing those 2 players, Felia and Darius, were instrumental. Were they the best player on the team? You can make that argument, but I think a lot of people can agree that it's Uche Izoje.
Who is coming back.
Who is coming back. That is the most important news that I think actually has to be brought up. Yeah, Sophie Burrows is entering her name into the portal. Yeah, Madeline Potts is entering her name into the portal. And yeah, Felia and Darius are gone just due to graduation. But Uche Izoje is coming back. That is your cornerstone, Alex. You can build, again, it's tough in women's basketball. If you're not one of 3 or 4 teams in the entire sport, will you win a championship in the next 4 years, 5 years? You think not, right? If you're not North Carolina, or not North Carolina, excuse me. If you're not South Carolina, if you're not UConn, if you're not one of those teams, maybe LSU you could sprinkle in there, you're not going to win a national championship in the next few years. But can an Uche Izoje-led team where she is the cornerstone and you build around her through the transfer portal and maybe recruitment as well, can that be a 5 or a 4 seed in the tournament in the upcoming few years? 1,000%. So Izoje coming back is instrumental to this team's future success.
I mean, you look at year-over-year progress. You go from a bottom half of the ACC team to a number 9 seed in March Madness. I mean, the natural progression is you're a 6 or 7, maybe a 5 seed next year.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even have to go to UConn. I know. Syracuse
Syracuse
we
got
would
4
love
minutes
that.
left in the show. We do not have time to break that down right now. We absolutely do not.
And I agree with you. I think that maybe, if we want to go back to the men's team, Jerry McNamara might want to sit down with Coach Jack and say, what's your pitch to these recruits? Because there was some good pickups for the men's team this year. William Kyle was a great pickup for SU. You had some players make impacts, but if Syracuse men's basketball could recruit out of the portal like Syracuse women's basketball did this year, you might finally be getting that return to March Madness.
Well, the thing is, Coach Jock a few seasons ago had a situation where she came over from Buffalo and she brought over Deasia Fair, who helped lead the team to a March Madness bid. Jerry McNamara comes over from Siena. Could he be bringing over Gavin Doty, his guard from over there? That was fantastic and really played well against Duke as well in that round of 64 matchup in March Madness a few weeks ago. Could it be a similar situation? Could Doty be that savior of Syracuse men's basketball, finally get them back to March Madness for the first time in 5 years? There's a whole lot of questions to be answered in a few weeks.
A lot of questions to be answered as the transfer portal gets set to open up in just a few short days.
Yeah.
That music means it's just about time to wrap up shop here on SportsNite. But don't worry, there's plenty more coverage tomorrow on these same very airwaves. Number 2, North Carolina. Number 3, Syracuse men's lacrosse. That is a 2 p.m. face-off. Our coverage begins at 1:30 with McClure Modeling countdown to face-off. And we're going up all the way until 5:30 with the double overtime. So plenty of lacrosse tomorrow on these airwaves. Make sure you tune in. Before we head out tonight, some quick thank yous to hand out. Our producer, Cole Purvis. On the board, our engineer, Griffin Bloomstein. It was great to talk with both Nick Evans, our reporter, and Javon Edmonds, who gave some really great insight into Syracuse football. and our desk members tonight, Jake Bowen and Jason Glick. It was a whole team effort, and it was great to break down a very interesting week for Syracuse athletics.
A very, very interesting week. A lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot to talk about. I'm glad we did, Alex. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else.
It was a pleasure. For Ben Chowick, I'm Alex Burstein saying so long. Thank you for listening to Sports Night right here on WAER.